Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you're watching this. Sid Thompson here again with another interview of our former Ram. Probably can maybe kind of guess who I've got, or I got a Bemidji State pullover on tonight. So let me just get into a little bit of a background before we go into this, who we're going to bring on here. This gentleman grew up in Roseau, played in high school for the Rams, was a 71 state tournament appearance. They were the runner-ups to Edina in a tough loss that year, which we'll talk about, 1-0. He went on then to start his career at UND, but moved on to Bemidji State, where he's part of the Bemidji Pioneer, has him as one of the top three teams, players of all time, and one of the teams there. From there, went on to play in some national teams and in the 76 Olympics for Team USA. And that point after there was a member on the 79 80 team, one of the final players cut on the 80 team. We'll discuss that. And then moved on to the Austrian League for Klagenfurt, where he and his brother played together, I believe. Don, as I talked to Don about that, and won a championship over in Klagenfurt. And most importantly, most of all, this gentleman was one of my coaches when I played high school for the Roseau Rams. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to bring on former coach of mine and former Ram, Gary Ross. Gary, can you hear me?
Yep, coming in good.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. A lot to talk about. I don't know if you got a mute. Can you hear that background sound there? You got your speaker on?
I got my speaker on, but I'm not hearing the background sound.
Okay, I got a little reverb coming back on my side. But let's. I'm going to pull up a picture here. And I want to, first of all, before I do, let's talk about, like I do with everybody else, your youth growing up there in Roseau, playing through the youth system, and then obviously moving on to a pretty good high school career there with Roseau and then college. So how was that? They had the North Rink, I'm assuming, when you were a youth there, that was built, correct, or no? Or?
Well, the North Rink was an outdoor rink. It was not our favorite place to go, obviously. But if we wanted to play hockey, that's where we had to go. And there was always a half a dozen to 10 of us out there, and we had to scrape and shovel the snow over the boards. And we did as much of that as we could just to keep the ice going. Sometimes we'd only scrape half the ice because that's all we needed. But it gave us an opportunity to get out and play hockey, and we could always hustle back into the Memorial Arena to warm up if it got cold. And oftentimes that's the way it was. When we played, there were many frozen toes in our skates. I mean, the feeling of that toes finally, the frozen toes warming up, stung many people. And it made us dance around in the locker room a little bit. But the North Rink was, it was very rustic back then. But we had to beg to get the sticks on the memorial at the end of the public skating. And it worked, so we had ice time.
When did they put that top on the North Rink there? When did they actually have that? Because you said you were out; it was outside when you were playing.
Yeah, well, they started with the bubble. If you remember the dome, or what do they call it? And I think that came in the early '80s, or right in there, and it worked. It wasn't the complete answer, but it worked. But the problem with the bubble, it was if it was 20 below outside, it was 20 below in the bubble, and plus the air circulated to get keep the bubble up, and so you almost had a 20 below with wind chill. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was good, and it gave us a nice second rink to skate on, and it worked. So until we decided to do something different, it was a great facility to play in.
Yeah, it's some good memories too, I bet. So playing out there and getting some ice time and moving up to the high school level, I want to pull up a team here, a picture of this, and let you talk about. Let me see if I can get around the screen. I got too dang many things here, by golly. Let's see what we got right there. Let's talk about that team in 71, because that's a pretty good darn looking at that roster there you guys had. Can you talk about, you had Tom Stock in that, and Delmore Knight in that there, and geez, you got Dog Feeble playing there, and Bufflins. I mean, you guys finished a tough season, 1-0 loss in the state tournament. So that green and white and the yellow, the Hornets, Edina. So can you talk a little about that team that year when you guys made it to the final there? You had a tough game to start out against Hastings. I saw in the Hastings, looking at the brackets here, Gary, 4-3, and you beat the Falls, and then that 1-0 loss in the state title game.
Yeah, to get to the state tournament, we had a nice solid team. I mean, we were senior dominated. Feebled was probably our lone sophomore on the team at the year, and their junior class was excellent also. And so we had a good combination of a good hunger. We missed out going to state in 1970. We lost to Bemidji, I think, in Bemidji. That's where the state region tournament was being held, and we lost in triple overtime in the semifinals, and it stung us pretty bad. So when we came back as seniors the following year, we had a goal. We wanted to obviously get to the state tournament, but we had more on our mind. We had out of that team, I never, it was brought up to me later, but we had 5 players that stepped off of that team as seniors and played Division I hockey. We had Robbie Harris at Minnesota. We had Mitch Brandt at Denver. We had myself, Kent Langley, and our goalie Tim Delmore at UND. So, I mean, that was a pretty good nucleus, and to this day, I've kind of jokingly said that it's probably one of the best Ram teams never to win the state tournament, because our first game at the state tournament, we played Hastings, and Hastings had a player by the name of Dean Telephus.
Yes.
Excellent hockey player, but Hastings was an unknown hockey power at the time, basically, and we jumped off to a 3-0 lead and had it in hand, and all of a sudden it was 3-2, and I don't think they ever tied it, but we ended up winning the game 4-3, and it was it's one of those hurdles that every team that goes down to state has to get through. You have to win the first game. Okay. Absolutely. So the second game we had a setup against International Falls, our Section 7 rival, and throughout the year, either they or we were rated number 1 and number 2 in the state, and we went back and forth. I believe we beat them on their home ice, and they knocked us off on our home ice, and just an excellent battle of two solid northern hockey teams. Being that we both made it to the state tournament, unfortunately, we had to meet in the semifinals, but we had the upper hand most of the game, and we took them, I believe it was 5-3, and just a nice win. So it set the stage for us to be where we wanted to be in the championship game. And at that time, it was an unknown Edina team. So the game itself was a typical northern Minnesota game against the Metro teams. So the crowd was, in general, pulling for the northern team. I mean, you could hear it. Edina, I believe, scored their one and only goal in the first period. So it was a wide open game, and we went at it for a while, and I would dare say the second and third period, we had the pressure on them, and we just could not put it in the net. We did have a goal in the third period that was waved off. Ugh. And it was one of those things where the referee on the blue line blew the whistle, not the referee behind the net or on the goal line. Oh, no. And he lost sight of the puck and blew the whistle. However, I don't know the whole story on it, but the puck went in the net, and there's no doubt about it.
And they didn't have a video replay then.
Yeah, and the whistle had blown, so no goal. And had we tied it up, the momentum was definitely going our way. So, but it was a different era back then as far as the checking process. We had a pretty good sized team defensively and as forwards, and our forwards were kind of handicapped because forwards at that time were not allowed to check into the offensive zone. And I do recall one time Robbie Harris was forechecking on a Edina defenseman. They went behind the net. The defenseman decided to stop and turn back towards the play, and Robbie was right there and ran into him.
So he got called for a penalty. Huh?
He got called for a penalty for checking. It was in the rule book. It was there. It was a good call by the ref, but at the same time, by nowadays standards, it would have been a collision type of thing.
Yeah. So you're telling me, Gary, just the way the game has evolved. I mean, I'm talking to Don, going back to the 60s. Now you're talking the 70s. I didn't, and I'm like I said, you coached me, but I don't remember that you couldn't forecheck and check. And now that's the big part of the game of hockey is forecheck and taking the body and getting in there and getting the puck. So you mean literally, Robbie got called for a penalty that was today just a normal hockey check.
Yes.
That's crazy.
It wasn't. I would dare say even in girls hockey nowadays that would not be a penalty because it was not an intentional check by any means. But another point I'd like to make out about that team. We were missing one of our top 6 players. Rick Burgraff was hurt that year. He got hurt towards the end. He broke his arm, and he was such a solid competitor. Every time he went on the ice, he was playing to beat you somehow. And I remember participating in practice, and I go, geez, I got to go in the corner with that guy. He was just that good. I mean, he just didn't let it ease up on you. And we were missing him. And to this day, I always felt that, geez, had Rick been in the lineup within a 1-goal game, who knows? But so unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. I mean, every team goes through injuries. Nothing you can do about it. But he would have definitely helped. I'd like to give him a little bit of credit on that. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. And rest in peace, Rick. He was my squirt coach. Remember?
Yes.
And you had quite the tandem, by the way, in the net there too. I saw Timmy Delmore and Willie Comstock were the 2 tenders. Is that correct? I mean,
yes.
Too bad back there.
Yeah, we had back in when we played coming up through the ranks, the rural schools were still very active. We had Ross and Malung and Wanaska and Salo, and every team, every town, every rural school had a hockey team. So they had goalies, and so our goalies were coming in from all these communities, rural communities, to produce. And it goes back to you look at someone like Blaine Comstock. He came up through the Ram rinks, and he played back in Malung, and going to Willie Comstock, of course, too. But I mean, Wanaska produced goalies, so we had goaltenders coming in, and not just 1 or 2. There's 5 or 6. And who knows is going to show up at the end. But it sure was a good feeding program.
Oh yeah. And looking at that roster, I remember. That looking at these names moving on, we went from there, and I'm a little jumping ahead of myself, but Robbie and you from the old Roseau paper years ago, I had the clipping where you guys were in the Olympics, and I had my little scrapbook of Roseau players. I used to follow it. So I kind of jump ahead of myself on that, but I just got to point out. But no, that was, and one other thing on that team too, today, Gary, he had Tim Feeble was a sophomore, he said. His son played in the state tournament, and now his grandson. So it's like generation. So I thought that was pretty cool this year to see his grandson playing, not at Roseau, but he was at Rochester in the state tournament. So he got some Roseau blood in the tournament this year. So from that high school team, then tell me what evolved. Okay, I saw you went to UND, and then from there migrated over to BSU. So how did that come about? Obviously Don played there. you kind of want to follow in the brothers' footsteps and just wanted to go to UND always, or what happened with the migration from there to BSU? I want to hear the backstory on that.
Okay, the as anything, back when we played at the high school level, high school was our focus. So when it was over, all of a sudden there's a few of us that was starting getting notifications from schools, and Robbie and Mitchum and I and Kent Langley and Tim Delmer, we're all getting some notification from different schools. Obviously, UND was a big connection for me, so Rube Bjorkman was the coach here at the time, and Rube is a great guy. He's just unbelievable hockey knowledge and stuff. So it was kind of a no-brainer. UND had the old, what they called the barn for the arena at the time. It was a military Quonset, but what an atmosphere for hockey. It was just unreal. I remember as a little younger guy, I would go on to watch my brother Don play there, and I go, geez, be such a treat to be able to play here someday. So when I was offered the opportunity to go there, I decided, yes, that would be no problem. So my freshman year, I walk in and, I was only 17 when I walked in as a freshman. I graduated fairly young, and so I was not mature as far as the physical attributes, but I was basically as a freshman about the 5th or 6th defenseman on the team. So I got to play some games. I didn't play some games, and I was perfectly good at that. That's where I belonged. I understood that, I was going against some Canadians that were 23, 24 years old, and boy, they could lift me off the ice if they wanted to, But so I just had to keep working at it, and they put you on a weight program and they put you going, and I had a wonderful freshman year. I played probably half the games, went on most of the road trips and stuff like that, and so my sophomore year I returned, and I was playing defense to start the year, and excuse me, we had a pretty good wealth of defensemen still, and I was approached by Gino Gasparini at the time. He was our assistant coach, and he said, Gary, we like the way you play defense, but we think we're going to try and make you a forward. And I go, well, I says, I played forward before. I says, I was a forward in Bantam. I played a forward my first year of JV. So it wasn't a new spot for me by any means. And so I went there and I played, and I enjoyed it. I ended up working my way into a third line regular position as a right wing, and that's the way I finished the year. But at the end of the year, I just didn't feel that I had a kind of I don't want to say a sour taste for hockey, but I just didn't have a heart for it. Okay. So I decided to leave school the spring quarter and go work, and with no plans. And when I did that, after getting back to Roseau and talking with my mom and dad and talking things over, I decided that after working for the summer, I want to get back to school. I had an idea that I wanted to become go into education, be an elementary teacher, doing some coaching, and I figured the best fit for that was Bemidji State. Okay. So I transferred to Bemidji State or so forth, and I still had no inclination to play hockey. Really? I was there for my education, and about the first week on campus, by chance, I crossed paths with the coach, Bob Peters, and he recognized me. He says, Gary, what are you doing here? I says, I'm going to school. I says, I decided I'm going to change my course and pursue my education. He said, are you interested in hockey? I said, not really. I said, I'm not here for that. And he said, oh, I'll tell you what. We have a real good bunch of guys here. you're going to be ineligible anyway, because that time we didn't have the portal, but they so to speak, or whatever. So you either had to sit out and or redshirt the whole year. So, and at that time, Bemidji was hosting the national tournament, the NAIA national tournament that year. And he said, "Why don't you come out and skate? If you like it, stick with it. If you don't, no hard feelings. Let's do it that way." So I did it, and he caught me at the time when we were doing dry land training and stuff like that. So we were out at the football stadium and doing stuff like that, and I got to know the guys pretty well. And it was a real good bunch of guys for me. It was, but still haven't touched the ice, So we got on the ice, and I started enjoying it again. Not that I didn't enjoy it all the time, but it's just that it felt like this is where I should be. So we kept skating, and I became eligible about January of that year, right after the first of the year, and finished my junior year there, and then my senior year there also. So just by chance, it kind of let things happen, Yeah.
This is the legendary coach R.H. Roberts, Bob Peters.
Yeah.
R.H. talked. Everything happens for a reason, they say, and lo and behold, you bump into Coach Peters, and the rest is history. So that's pretty amazing. So from there, and like I said, I want to point out that in reading and doing research on you, Gary, they have you as one of the all-time players at Bemidji State, and telling me that story. I think to hear that, it's like that's pretty amazing for a guy that was not going to play hockey, just wanted to go to school, be a teacher, and a good one at that, by the way. But be a teacher, you end up being on one of those teams. When I think the third team all time from Bemidji Pioneer, Rink Live, they have those for Bemidji State. So that's pretty amazing. And only playing it a year and a half, because you said you were eligible for January. Excuse my dog. But yeah, that's quite a story. So the little guy, he's old. But moving on from there. Hey, I already fed him. It's like lunchtime supper. He eats like 24/7 if I could feed him. But he's 15, so he's on his back nine. So he can raise it. Tell on Sparky. Anyway, sorry for that. Moving on then from there, Gary, what happened as far as you went from there? You played on some national teams, and then lo and behold, you're in Innsbruck. Isn't that where the 76 Olympics? And I look at that squad. I think first of all, looking at some of the national team there. And then the Olympic team. So the national team came first, right? I see some of these guys. Or was it vice versa?
Vice versa, yeah.
Okay, so the Olympic team was first, then the World Championship, the national team. So in that Innsbruck team, there you have Blaine Comstock as well as yourself on that squad, and Robbie. So 3 Roseau guys, playing in the Olympics together. That's pretty amazing. And let me throw up a picture of that team there. So first of all, here you guys. Just kind of in your track suits. There you to the far left there. And then here's the team photo of the full squad. And I think who was the coach? Badger Bob back there? Was that Bob Johnson the coach through that year?
Badger Bob. What a great day for hockey.
Yes. Well, what was it like playing with some of those guys and playing in the Olympics? And first of all, looking at, if I may, the very first game you guys played in the Olympics that year, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it against the USSR? Russia?
We had what they call a preliminary round where the format was different back then. They brought in 12 teams, and they ranked you 1 through 12 depending on your world ranking. We were ranked number 6, so we had to play number 7 for the qualify to get into the top 6 where you wanted to be. And we played Yugoslavia first, but that's the format back then. But how the transition went from Bemidji State to the Olympic team was I was starting to getting letters of notice from the U.S. Olympics. Bob Johnson, our general manager, was Art Berglund at the time, and they said that we're keeping an eye on you. We're going to do it, and then of course they invite you to a trial camp, and I went to a trial camp in Bloomington, Minnesota, and out of that Bloomington, Minnesota, excuse me, they picked a few players, and then for their final camp, they brought 30 players to Madison, Wisconsin, where our home base was. And out of those 30 players, we had divided us up into 2 teams of 15, and we went at it for a week. And we played hockey and we trained, and then they chose the final group to go over to Europe, and I was one of that was chosen. So in a way, that was wow. I said that alone. I said I'm real happy with that. And as I kept on playing, and I found out, and I think any hockey player will say this: when you play with players with high ability, it raises your level. You have to do that, or you flounder. And I think through the whole process, it raised my game up quite a bit too. So by the time we went through a 2-week training program over in Europe and got back to the United States, I was pretty solid member of the team. I felt like, I belong here. So it was working pretty good.
Yeah, I look at that roster, Gary, and I see the late Steve Jensen on that squad. I mean, looking at some of these guys, how was Steve to play with as a hockey player and a person? I mean, I met him a few times. I mean, what was he like to play with as a player?
You know, he came out of I want to say a school like Armstrong or something like that in high school.
Plymouth area, yeah. I don't know if Armstrong possibly, but Plymouth is born.
Went to Michigan Tech, and he was about as an energetic type of player that anyone could play with. He was unbelievable. I remember his story in his words. He played at Michigan Tech, and they won the NCAA his freshman year, I believe. Then he went on to he was chosen for the U.S. national team in '75. And he says, "Gosh, this is great." And he goes, "We just won the national tournament. Now I'm on the Olympic. I can't wait to play for the USA." And he says, "Our first game was against Russia, and they clobbered us 9-2. And he goes, "Geez, I thought we were pretty good." He said, "We got clobbered." So then here he is on the '76 team, and he brought that same energy, and he was one of an up and coming player at that time, and a high evaluated player. But what a treat to play with a guy like Steve Jensen. He was really a wonderful player.
Yeah, I had to bring him up because I met him a few times. And the guy Coachwood here in Winona did some camps with him too, so he has a lot to say about him. And a couple other players on that squad too. I mean, I see another legendary coach at high school level. Mike Randolph was on that squad. Did he actually play, or was he part of that squad in '76?
Mike was with us up until the Olympics. I think him and Jeff Besser, we called him Duke. Jeff Besser played at St. Thomas, and Mike Randolph, but they were right there with us in Innsbruck, and they had to release 2 players, and they released Besser and Randolph, and it was kind of heartbreaking for both of them, but they both were very much part of the team throughout the whole year.
Yeah, well, that's sometimes how it goes, and we'll talk about that in the next Olympics there. So from that, then you said you guys we ended up 3-3 that year. How was it to play against a guy like Tretch? You look at the Olympic squad from Russia and all the years. I watched a documentary on Tarasov, I think if I pronounce his name, I started that program, and seeing the Mikhailovs, the Maltsevs, the Tretiak. I mean, what was it like to come across those names in the Olympics or in World Championships?
Well, there was no doubt that we were quite aware of who we were playing. They had tangled with a few NHL teams prior and handled them. And so we knew what we were getting into. Tretiak, of course, was just outstanding in the nets. They had Petrov, they had Gusev, they had Yakashev, Karmelov, and they were just one line after another. The flow was so good. We held them as best we could. I think it ended up 6-2, 6-3, but it was we weren't in awe of them, but we knew that we had our hands full, and we just kept plugging away and did what we could. So and it worked out, as it did, I guess so.
Well, I looked at that game. Yeah, I saw that, and I saw Tretchek. I looked at the starting lineup. I saw a PDF and his name. Like, wow, best goalie in the world, in my opinion. I think the last game in that series, though, maybe it was Olympics. But when it was played against, I think you saved your best for last, didn't you? When you played, was it Slovakia or no? Who was this? Yuri Sira, the goal. I think we had one. I looked at the stats. I thought you had a goal and a couple of assists in one of those games. Maybe I'm wrong in the game, but you had a pretty good finish to win these series, though. I think you got a goal and 2 assists in one of these games. Correct me if I'm wrong.
What we did, in like I say, the format was different. We played the teams according to the rank, and being that we came in at number 6, Russia was number 1. We played 1 and 6, then 2 and 6, and 2 was Czechoslovakia. Then we played 3 and 6, and 3 was Finland, and we knocked them off, and that was a mild upset, and simply because they were the number 3 team in the world at the time, and we were number 6. So, excuse me. Once we knocked them off, we had a chance for a medal. And their next game, we played with Poland, and we knocked them off. So now we're sitting with 2 wins, and we had to play West Germany in our final game. And West Germany, we needed a tie to win the bronze. Wow. And we had it at hand, but at the same time, I don't know if we ran out of gas, so to speak, or West Germany rested. They've been kind of famous for not giving it their most against Russia and Czechoslovakia, just because they're not going to beat them anyway. And here the U.S. competes hard on every game, and so they were resting. Well, so it's a theory anyway that they're resting for the chance for that. Anyway, it worked out for them, and they won the bronze, and they respectfully so they deserved it. So not too bad.
I think it was a Poland game that you had the goal and 2 assists. I saw on that one. I'm looking at these old PDFs from games. It's pretty cool looking back. The internet's wonderful. We can find stuff. I tried to find video, but I had a tough time finding some video back of those tournaments. But we got it all in here, right? You remember it all in that memory, right? That's your video. So
we had one player on our team, Doug Ross. The other Ross, we call him. Doug played at Bowling Green University, and then he was the University of Alabama head coach for a while. And he had found the full coverage of the 76 Olympic Games, and he put them on a disc and sent it to all of his players. So we have all the game action of every game, even though it wasn't televised like it is nowadays. The full game, it was just the highlights of the games and stuff like that back in those days, and the quality isn't quite as good as it is nowadays, obviously. But but we do have it on tape now. Yes.
I think I found one game. I think that I don't know if it was the World or the Olympic, but it was against Russia. It was bored. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I could see the pictures. So it was your guys' team. So, but yeah, it's very tough to find. So from there, then 76, you move on. You're playing some international stuff, and let's talk about that 79 going into 80, because not a lot of people know. They always talk about Ralph Cox. Well, Gary, you were one of the last members of that squad to be cut. I remember watching you all the way in the exhibition games and that, and then boom. Can you talk about how that went? Because I was talking to Steve a little bit about this. And, you can tell me the whole story so people understand, but you're right on the cusp of making that squad as well.
Well, they Herb Brooks and Craig Patrick, they had assembled quite a talent of players. Obviously, I mean, they won the gold medal. I look back at the defensemen that they had that were playing at the time. Brad Morrow, went on to Islander fame and Stanley Cup. Mike Ramsey, Billy Baker, Jack O'Callahan. They even moved Davey Christian to defense at the end, maybe that was my spot. I don't know. But Bob Suter, they had some wonderful talent. The problem when you have a lot of talent on a team is someone's not going to play. And I guess according to the coaches, and you got to respect their decisions. They've seen us all play. They chose that I was the one left out, and so be it. It's all part of the game. I've always said if you're going to try out for a hockey team, there's a chance you might not make it, or any team. If you do make it, more power to you. But you've got to be realistic about it also. It wasn't painful, it wasn't hurtful, but it was a letdown. My goal was to be on the Olympic team, and I really, really wanted to be part of that 80 team with Herb Brooks and all the crew, and Neil Broughton was there, and I knew Davey Christian well. Billy Baker and I were good friends. Phil Verkota, we're all real close friends. Northern Minnesota boys, So it was good. But that's the way it is. You just have to move on.
Yeah. I want to throw up a picture from that. They call it, the others. And believe I forgot that looking at this, Aaron was also one of the last guys cut. Aaron Broughton. You look at the people on here. Bruce Horsch, who you played, Hastings guy in that state tournament, I think in '71. He might have been the goalie. And there you are. Donnie Waddell did pretty well for himself after this. Didn't get cut. He made the PM of the Thrashers and whoever else. But, yeah, everybody talks about Ralph Cox in the middle here, but there you are with Aaron Broughton, Lass Sauger, Bruce Horsch, a bunch of others that people didn't realize right to the tail end. And Timmy Har didn't Herb bring him in kind of at the last second, kind of as another intimidation thing or what? He always played mind games, wasn't he?
Well, I tell you what, Herb's degree was psychology.
Okay.
And there's no doubt about it. He knew what buttons to push on certain players. And but anyway, the whole process with bringing in Hara was having here at the college level. He was just putting the puck in the net right and left, and just he made it look easy. I think he was trying to say, listen, guys, there's other players out there that can play. Yeah. And we're going to give this guy a look, and if you want to be part of this team, you're going to have to produce. So psychologically, I don't know. And the same thing with Aaron Broughton. He had the opportunity to bring him in, and I think Herb got a little pressure from other coaches and stuff as far as how many Gophers are you going to bring into that team, But anyway, it was, there's no doubt, a guy like Aaron Broughton, Tim Hara, Dave Waddle, all these guys are excellent hockey players that could have been part of that team as easily as anyone. So
yeah, and like I said, I just wanted to point that out because knowing playing in the '76 Olympics and then that close to a bronze medal, and then lo and behold, they made a gold. That's been a little tough, but knowing that you were on the cusp of that still says a lot. You can be pretty proud of that. There's not many people that say they can play in the Olympics and then they can say one of their last, only one of the last guys cut. And one of only 3 Bemidji State players to play in the Olympics. It was you, McElmurray, and Charlie Brown.
And right? Blaine Comstock.
And Blaine did. That's right, Blaine. Well, Blaine, yeah. Fortunately, I saw his stats. I don't know. He didn't play that much in the tournament. Looks like.
Well, Blaine was unfortunate. He played against Yugoslavia in our qualifying game that we won, and then he got the flu.
Oh. And
according to Olympic protocol, you can't take much medication to drug yourself. So basically, it's aspirin and everything else. And he was almost quarantined from our team on the bench, because we didn't want anybody else to get. So by the time he got healthy again, Jim Warden, our other goalie, was playing well, and we rode with him, and I guess, and that's the way it ended. But poor Blaine, he got the flu bug, so he missed out on a few games because of that.
Didn't know that. Well, we'll have to get him on. I'll have to get him on and talk about that. So
yeah.
So I was wondering why you didn't see any stats for him for that year. Interesting. So Gary, was it were you playing? When did Klagenfurt come into play? Was it after that or before that? Because was that 79 and kind of going into that Olympic stuff? Tell me a little bit about Klagenfurt years.
Yeah. Well, after the 76 Olympic team, I did I went to the St. Louis Blues camp and tried out there, and I had a pretty good camp, but they wanted to send me to the IHL to go play minor hockey, and I said, my heart wasn't in it. My goal was to play in the upper echelon, but there was only 18 NHL teams back in those days. It's not like there was 32 teams like there is nowadays, and there's players from everywhere were playing. So the competition was there, but so anyway, I went back to school, and I played with the Roseau Leafs for a few years, and a wonderful opportunity to keep playing hockey and having fun and enjoying it. Successful hockey. It was playing for your hometown, and then I had an opportunity to go to Klagenfurt, Austria. They were looking for a defenseman that year, and they originally contacted my brother Don, being a former player there, and he says, "Do you know any defensemen that are available right now?" And he said, "How about my brother Gary?" I said, "I'm in." I said, so we negotiated a contract kind of right over the phone there. What I thought I wanted to have, and wasn't a lot of money, but it was like my brother said. He says, if you could go over play hockey in Europe for a year and come back without not owing anything, would you like it? I go, yeah. He says, well, we'll get you some money too. so we did that, and I went over there, and for the 1 year, it was just one of those good hockey experiences again, where you get in with a bunch of teams, a bunch of young players, and the Klagenfurt group at that time was had just transitioned from the older group to the younger group. So I was playing with a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old players at the time, and I was about 24 at the time, and we just kept getting better and better. We started off real good, and we ended up playing in the championship game, and we had home ice advantage, and we played against Vienna, I recall it, and Vienna had a player that played for UND, Roger Lamoureux, and so nice hockey player, and we knocked them off pretty handily on our home ice, and we became Austrian champions. I was offered an opportunity to come back the following year there, and I told them, I said, I would really like to come back here, but I said it's tryouts for the 80 Olympic team and back in the United States. And I said, if I commit to you and go try out, I'm going to have to, decline on that commitment. So I said, I'd rather keep it no commitment and then do it. And the way it worked out, I made the 80 team to a certain point, and it would have been too late to join the Klagenfurt team at that point anyway. But so it would have been a nice opportunity to go back to Klagenfurt and play there. A lot of excellent memories there. We just truly enjoyed it. In fact, I don't know if you want part of the discussion here, but Donnie and I both and families went back to Klagenfurt this past year.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was curious about that. So he played there 2 years, and you played one. So you played with Don, all right?
He was there in the 70s, and I was there towards the late 70s.
Okay. So, but between the two of you, you won 3 championships, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So, not a bad gig, And then from there, you go to get a chance to go try out for the Olympics in '80s. So, not bad. I mean, quite a resume. So after that's all said and done, Gary, you go from the getting cut from the Olympic team. They win the gold, and then when does it all come to fruition? Say, you know what, I'm gonna quit playing and I'm gonna start teaching. So what happened there and becoming a coach in Roseau? How did that all come into play?
Reality. I had to find a job. You know, hockey at that point, it was all amateurish. You know, there's very little. You know, Klagenfurt paid me okay, and I made money doing them, but everything else was amateur hockey. And you got to find a job. Like I said, I went back to Bemidji State to become an educator, and I really wanted to do that. I felt that was my calling, you know, so to speak. So I put out some applications, and I actually had a job interview in Alexandria, Minnesota, and I was signed a contract there to teach fourth grade. And out of the blue, Roseau School contacts me, and some teacher had resigned or taken a leave of absence, and says, "Gary, are you interested in a job?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I just signed a contract with Alexandria." And they said, "Have the school board met on it yet?" And they said, "No, they haven't." I said, "But they haven't made it official." But so they said, "Well, send them a letter. Say you've had a different offer, you change your mind, and we'll set you up here. And we'd like you to coach hockey and anything else." I said, "It sounds real good." So I got through it, and I got out of the Alexandria contract and came here, and I had a choice to teach either fourth grade or sixth grade, and both of them were excellent choices. But I had two nephews in sixth grade at the time, and I said, "No, I'm not going to teach those two guys." So I chose fourth grade, and that's where I ended up being. And then, of course, assistant hockey coach with Gary Hokinson, and that worked out real well.
And you did a little do girls golf too up there too, if I remember right? Were you a golf coach too?
Yeah. There's another interesting story. I originally was assigned the boys' tennis coach, and the year before they graduated every player, and so when we had to sign up for the tennis team, only 2 seventh graders signed up. So I went up to our athletic director, Gottsman, and I said, "Are we going to have a tennis team for 2 seventh graders?" And he said, "I don't think so." And he says, "We've already paid you basically throughout the year to be the tennis coach. So we got to find a position for you." So they made me assistant golf coach to Bob Strandlin, and or it's Bob Strandquist, I think his name was. And and I said, "Okay, I'd love golf." I said to do that. It was girls golf, and they had a decent program established already, but the JV coach didn't have a lot to do. Well, the next year, Strandquist transferred to another school, and I all of a sudden became the head coach of the girls golf team. Ended up doing that for 20 years, and truly enjoyed it. I think
had a good run. You had a good run. How many championships? How many subsection championships and section championships did you have? Quite a few.
I don't think we ever lost a subsection championship. We had at least 8 or more section championships. We had a stretch of teams that we were runner-up back when players like Sarah Hugelin and Renee Halverson and Jodelle Olsen, and we had a good team there. But we had a team where we were runner-up in '99, champions in 2000, champions in 2001, and runner-ups again in 2002. But I resigned in 2000 after that championship season. But what a group of athletes! I mean, and very hard competitors. You know, we had the Lumbum girls. We had the Butler girl came through. They had so many good, talented golfers.
Yeah, I think that Butler gal is actually playing on the pro tour this week. I think I saw that she's on the tour, so that's pretty amazing. Yeah, the coach moved on to the LPGA. So,
yeah.
I just read here too, Gary. I was reading in your 2004. You were inducted in the Bemidji State Hall of Fame, by the way, and they were saying here you was named section coach of the year 8 times and state co-coach in 1985, and then also in 2000. So that's pretty good accolades there for a coach of a girls golf team. So kudos to you for that. That's pretty amazing. And then, of course,
a coach is only as good as their players, you know.
True.
And championships come maybe not from the work you do that year, but the work that you do prior to them winning. You know, I've always focused as a coach, you know, your good players are talented and they're going to have a lot of drive. And I've always focused on the ones that needed development, that needed a little more help, that needed. So those are the ones I always had a tendency to focus with, because it made the team stronger. And as a team made stronger, it was easier for the better players to just be freed to be themselves and let them do their thing. So, you know, it's like I say, the work, you benefit from the championships, but the work you do prior to that is when you really do your work.
Absolutely. And there's, I'm going to show a picture. I don't have the golf puck. Oops, that's the wrong one. They're by golly. They're right next to each other. Here's the 84 hockey team that I wasn't on there when they went to the tournament, but there you are up there next to Hokie. And used to rip on in 85, 86 when I played. I'll talk about an incident I want to bring up. But boy, I tell you what, Gary, for a guy that said you weren't that developed, you said going into college, but you could rip a slap shot or two, I tell you. I remember in practice, boy, you let it rip at me more than once. It was quite a challenge with those big green pads. Do I stop it or let it go by?
It was always fun because I think we used to play for a malt, you know, and we used to. Yeah, I don't think any of us ever collected on it, but we used to get. But I figured, well. If you guys can handle my shot, I said you can handle anything that the high school boys are throwing at you. So it was a lot of fun. I tried not to hit you in the head too often, but you know. Well,
maybe you should have knocked some sense into me then.
You were quick, Sid. You could dodge quite well. So
hey, I want to bring up, talking about playing for you as assistant at Hokie there. I can't remember, it was 85. I forget the year, but it was also the same year, because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this. We were playing in Bemidji at the John Glass, whatever it was. And it was one of them nights where I didn't play that. I was backed up. Johnny Ness played that night. And I said, well, Swanee, I wrote on with the radio announcer, Jack Swanson. And that night it happened to be a little frizzly, and they just did the gully road. You know, the gully road was brand new tar. And I should have known that we should have turned around, and because it was sleeting and kind of got really slick. Because we went when we went to the end where you turn off to go towards Steve River, we went straight through the intersection, almost in the ditch, and we knew it wasn't a good night. That was back when, cell phones were a brick back then, Gary. They weren't just a little cell phone like we have right in our hand now.
Right.
So I go to the rink the next day. I rode with him, and then my equipment I just left it there and put it on the bus. I get to the arena the next morning, and they say, what are you doing here? I mean, what do you mean, what am I doing here? He says, weren't you on the bus? What are you talking about? Weren't you on the bus? I said, no. I rode home with Jack last night. Well, don't you know that the bus rolled last night? I'm like, you're kidding me. So I was like, wow. And fortunately, nobody was really hurt. They dropped the bruise, too bad, but other maybe Bobcat with his legs wiggling up in the air. But tell me the best story I heard, and maybe you can paraphrase, but Brian Janarski, I think he asked him, I says, are you okay, Ski? And what did he tell you? Brian Janarski, remember something about the green and white?
Oh no, I don't recall that what Ski told me, but it was quite a harrowing experience. I recall that quite much. Yeah.
Yeah, they it was news because I think that same year up in Canada, I don't know if it was the SACX bus or somebody else's bus that rolled, and there were some people that were killed. But yeah, that was quite an experience. It was all over the news, and it was just.
Yeah.
But I remember, I think.
Yeah.
Swift, something like that. But I do remember, I think you told me, and again, I'm paraphrasing, you asked him, are you okay, Brian? And he said, yeah, coach, I'm tough. I wear the green and white. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly. But now, damn near 40 years ago.
That sounds exactly like him. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
So I know we're winding up. I don't want to take too much more of your time, Gary. I mean, I could talk all sorts of memories. And, of course, fast pitch days. I mean, you were one hell of a fast pitch player, too. I think if I remember playing on a Polaris team with you, I think we played together in one of the two of those teams back in the Carson Headland days, huh?
We talk about that old fast pitch league that we used to have in Roseau on Thursday nights quite a bit. And it took me a long time to develop and learn how to hit that softball. But once you caught on, I could hold my own against most pitchers, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And, it was fun because a lot of those old, those guys come back from playing hockey or playing pro, like Alan Hangslavin played, Dale Smedsmo played. There's some intense games, still having that mentality, still playing pro hockey, minor league hockey on the softball field. So some good experience. Yeah. So, well, Gary, it's almost been an hour here, and I could keep talking hockey and everything with you. I really enjoyed. So I just want to ask you a couple questions. I kind of always like to leave it with, but do you have any regrets? Any regrets when it comes to hockey?
No, I really don't. I honestly know that I was never the best player on any of the teams that I played on, but I was one of the hardest workers. And I always worked as hard as I could to become the best I could be. And I played for the team. I never played for myself. I never played for, to see what I could do next or something like that. It was, well, what could I do for the team? And I worked my tail off whenever I was out there. And whether it was in Saturday morning league, Thursday night league, high school, through the college, Olympics, whatever. And I think if any athlete does that, works their tail off and gives it their best, there should be no regrets. There shouldn't be.
Yeah, and that was going to lead me to a question I ask everybody, I interview, and whether it's this or whatever, but if you had a young athlete, whether it be a young golfer or a hockey player come up to you and say, Mr. Ross, Gary, what can you give me as far as advice? I mean, if you had some advice, what would you tell a young? Because times have changed since when I was a kid, since you were a kid, since your brother was a kid. A lot of things have changed with sports, but certain things haven't. So what advice would you tell a young athlete, especially a hockey player?
Well, you set your goals high and work for them, but at the same time, you might not achieve. Like say a young hockey player says, "I want to play in the NHL." Well, fantastic goal, but not everyone's going to play in the NHL. But what are you doing to make yourself better at the moment? What are you doing? Whether you're a golfer, baseball player, whatever. What are you doing just to make yourself better than you are now, right now? And I think that's as a coach or anybody giving some advice to a younger player. Okay, where are you at now? Where can you be in a month, in a year, in 2 years? And if you never get to that level, you're okay. You did a good job. You worked your tail off, and just enjoy the game. Just enjoy where you're at.
Well, I can't stress that enough. Like playing for the love of the game and enjoying it. And that's why I enjoy doing this, just talking hockey, talking sports. It keeps me young. It keeps me in the game. And that's just one thing, for the love of the game. That's what I really can't stress enough. If you don't have the passion and love, and it's time to quit, So,
yeah.
So, any final thoughts? I mean, just other than that, I kind of like to end it on that, those things. But any final thoughts, Gary, about all the hockey in this, the communities? And a lot of times have changed. Like I said, a lot of technology, a lot of things. There's coaching year round, there's hockey year round. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, just about all the way the kids aren't becoming kids anymore; they become almost like machines. They're playing year round. I mean, any comments on that?
Yeah, you look at the opportunity to become a 3-sport athlete doesn't exist anymore. We're lucky if we get a 2-sport athlete nowadays, and I think we see it more so in our smaller communities like Roseau, Warroad, even Thief River and things like that. We get these athletes, and we need the good athletes to go out for various sports. We can't let them just rely on one sport and put your so-called eggs in a one basket type of thing. But what we need is to give kids the opportunity to play various things. I reflect back on our hockey days when we played every position. Didn't matter. Like myself, I played forward, I played defense, I tried goalie. I'm not good, but and so when the opportunity came, there's coaches that say, I need a forward, and if a kid has never played forward, what are you going to do? I mean, or defense, and I think that's one thing I'd like to see in our youth programs anyway, is rotate kids around or give them an opportunity to play defense for a while, and then forward for a while, and get them a taste of what it's like and a better understanding of the game. I think it helps you understand what each position does and its importance and positioning and all that stuff. So it's just one of those things that you have to learn, and you can't do it by being a one focus type of player.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you on the 3-sport thing. I mean, I played 4 back when I was home in a small town, and I think it just helps you be more well-rounded. But specialization, maybe specialize if you're that good as a senior, maybe, but play the different sports and learn how to play other positions, because I think it helps you all as an overall person and athlete. But I mean, I have a lot of more questions, Gary, I could ask you, but I know I don't want to take up much of your time, or I'm taking up enough. This is probably gone, it's an hour. I really appreciate you talking to me about the, hockey and experiences and, Olympics and nationals and coaching, because, that's most of all, you were a coach of mine, and we may have not had the best teams, obviously, when I played. I was born a little bit too late and a little bit too early, kind of a tweener.
Tell you what, Sid, we had a real good team. That bus rollover affected a lot of attitudes, I tell you. It changed your team. It changed it.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad to be here and talk hockey with you today, and it's been an absolute pleasure to regenerate some memories. I'm sure when I stop this, we'll be talking, and something will come up in my head like, I wish I would have asked Gary that. I wish I would have talked about this or that, because that's the thing about hockey, Gary. Playing with there's so much camaraderie, so many experiences, so many memories. That's the best thing about it. So on that note, I'm going to end it. I'll stop it here because, again, I feel like Columbo asking another question, Columbus, and another thing. that's kind of how I go. But thank you so much. Yeah. It was an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate it. Gary Ross, former Roseau Ram, and one of the best to ever play at Bemidji State. So I thank you, Gary.
You bet, Sid. Thank you.